Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks, as always, for making your way here, checking out the series. You know what to do. You like what you see, what you hear. Hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with all of your favorite artists. I got to tell you, I'm so excited today to be talking with Dave from Animal Collective. Avey Tare, how are you?
I'm doing well. Doing well today.
So we got a brand new record on our hands here called Time Skiffs. Congratulations on this one. I mean, there's probably a lot of adjectives I want to put in here, but it's fun, it's unique, it's creative, it's trippy, it's everything that I think I want out of an Animal Collective record. So great job.
Yeah, it was a long time coming, this one. The longest we've ever spent working on a record, I feel like. So yeah. I'm glad it's paying off, and at least we enjoy it, but it's always good to know that it's, other people are digging it.
So, I don't know how much you all think about this once the record is made or beforehand, but inevitably, because of the way you all create, there ends up being this world beyond the music. I mean, there's the visual components of it, but there's, just the way the songs, like, is that part of it? And if so, what is the world you all are creating for this record here?
It definitely happens. It's a part of it. Sometimes it's a little bit more intentional than others, and sometimes we only really start to understand these worlds that we're creating like well into the process. You know what I mean? It's all. I think I can speak for all of us in the band. In that we're all very process oriented. The process is a very important part. And so, yeah, the process just inspires us a lot and inspires the world that's created around the record. So I feel like it becomes, at least for me, it becomes this, immersive experience where I just want to be in to create what I want to create, to complete the vision. I want to be immersed, I guess, in this world. And yeah, that has a lot to do with just the artwork and surrounding myself with that type of stuff. I feel like getting from, point A to point D or whatever, being the end of the record, sometimes that world, for me at least, can change from the beginning to the end. And, a lot of times what the listeners see, or what the public gets, is a kind of augmented version of where things started for us. You know what I mean? Sometimes it takes waiting to see what comes out at the end to figure out what that world is. But yeah, I feel like, and then it just helps conveying the message to people, to have visuals and, other sort of special things, special performances, stuff to go along with it, just to sort of enhance where we're coming from. And I think this one is just, I think it's kind of different for all of us. And I think the disparate nature of recording the record, and the fact that we were all sort of doing it in isolation and separate from each other, made the experience kind of quite different for each of us. But I feel like one of the main things or the world that we're trying to convey in this is this sort of timeless world, this world where linear time doesn't really exist so much. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that we were kind of, I feel like I dwell in that sort of existence for a lot of the creative process, especially. But I feel like the pandemic and quarantine really put the majority of people, I feel like, in the world probably in this kind of like holding pattern or timeless state, where I feel like it was really on the brain a lot. And I feel like, so that provided, the notion of time and this sort of like non-linear time world existence, being part of the world that we're creating with this record.
Yeah. And with that title, of course, Time Skiffs, and watching the video to Walker, I was thinking back, probably, movies I've seen, books I've read, when you have those moments. And again, looking at that music video for Walker and thinking, I love like time travel, all of that stuff. That's one of my favorite subjects, especially when it comes to arts. But my God, would it be scary to actually be presented in a situation like that music video? I don't think my brain could handle that.
Yeah, it's hard to know whether it's be a bad trip or a trip.
That's interesting though, because there, of course, inevitably, well, I won't say inevitably, it seems like in this situation anyway, that, certain words come up more often than not. Like the sun seems to play a very big role on this record, which might not be the first time, but it just pop up. And I don't know if there's a relation with the sun's appearance throughout multiple songs and what we're talking about with nonlinear time or anything. I mean, is that something that you figure out on the back end after it's done, going, oh, look, that was there a lot?
Yeah, I think that's the kind of thing where it's usually just sort of like putting these puzzle pieces together, and sort of creating a map from all of that and saying, oh yeah, that's the overall scheme, the overall arc. That's kind of what we're trying to say. You know what I mean? It's like, and you don't realize till you're out of it, looking back, how everything kind of did play a part, or does play. There are all these little pieces that provide meaning. But I feel like the sun guides the time of the day. Obviously it's a super important part of the day, daylight, and so in that sense, yeah, its relation to time becomes very, very obvious or very apparent.
We all come off of sort of an environmental project anyway with Tangerine Reef, the audio visual record. Did that because being that was the thing right before this as a collective, some form of the collective anyway, do you see now looking back, did that have is there a bridge from that record to this one?
I think for me personally, there is, just in terms of finding my way back into a personal recording setup, a personal studio setup in my house, since a lot of that was kind of done at home as well. We recorded it in an actual studio, but all of the prep, and all of the writing was done at home and in home studios. And so I think that kind of led the way, because then that sort of bled into me recording my solo record, which came right after that, which was Cows on Hourglass Pond, and that was done at home as well. So I think that kind of, certainly led the way into this project for me. I don't know. I think originally this project was supposed to take such a different path. And we were supposed to record it together in a studio. And we spent a lot of time in 2019 together writing and putting the songs together. And there was sort of a whole era of some of these songs that come from a show that we played in New Orleans in 2018. So I think in some ways this record and this group of songs has had its own life and its own path, kind of separate from Tangerine Reef. I mean, especially because Noah wasn't involved in that either. But I feel like that time period around Tangerine Reef, I think there was a lot of just looking back for me on our career. I feel like interviews and press stuff that we were kind of asked to do at that time all wanted to focus on, the past. And it was sort of like the anniversary of Merriweather Post Pavilion came up. So I feel like around that time, there was a lot of looking back for me, and just a lot of, being awoken to or just reconnected to, I guess is a better word, the past, and why we started making music in the first place, and what we're doing. And we've had such a diverse career and done so many different awesome things. I mean, awesome, and like we've enjoyed them, not necessarily that everybody else has, but that I'm just grateful for. And so I think that time period around Tangerine Reef was important, because it was kind of in between album cycles, and I kind of think it just, for me, it was healthy and reconnecting me to just the basic roots of Animal Collective, and that project was that kind of project for us, not sort of doing a traditional record and doing something for more of a visual film or arts project, something tied into that. So I think doing that kind of thing always kind of makes us realize, like, oh yeah, this is like the kind of band we are, you know what I mean? We're not like a one-hit wonder band, or a band that's like focused on singles or something so much. So I think writing all this new material, I definitely like had all that in mind in my heart,
It's an interesting point for any kind of band that has longevity too, because inevitably, if you make your mark with a sound, whichever sound happens to be at that time, and your fans, some fans will grab onto that, and of course they're going to hold you to that moment where they connected, their entry point for the band. And then for an artist, you try to progress, you try to keep going. But it does seem like at some point, if you're around long enough, and I say this for lots of bands, it seems like this anyway from the outside, that you sort of have to reconcile with that moments of being like, hey, it's okay if we do that a little bit again.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I think for us, I feel like it's a double-edged sword, you know what I mean? Because I feel like listeners, are always going to interpret the music the way that they do, you know what I mean? And that I think we're totally open to that, and I think that's good. But I think that makes it evident that people are often going to try and draw comparisons to records and say, oh, this is definitely this. And like, I read a million times, like, oh, this is, Strawberry Jam meets Painting With, or this is Campfire Songs meets, and I feel like that's all positive. You know what I mean? I feel like it after a certain point, it becomes the fans' music and not ours more. So it's for the fans to draw, and I feel like that's the world that we're trying to create, and that's how we want to relate to people, and I think that's awesome. That might not be the way I see it, you know what I mean? I find that, like, musically we're often or most of the time trying to like find new places, new territory for ourselves, but as I feel like, as we always say, we're still the same band, you know what I mean? I feel like at a certain point, like you're saying, after 20 years especially, certain traits are always gonna come into the mix, and I feel like that's our personalities, and I would hope that's why that's one of the reasons people like Animal Collective, you know what I mean, because they relate to our personalities in the band. And so I feel like it's always crucial for us to feel like there's an Animal Collective element to what we're doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because as you're saying, once it's out there, the music kind of becomes, the audiences, the fans, the listeners, and the meaning that they inject into those songs can sometimes be right on board with what you meant, and sometimes not. I was thinking back, especially, I think a lot of people are still talking, it's like, the Beatles documentary was just out with Get Back, and you see that moment, especially with the song right there. It's like a song that was just jammed into existence, and suddenly all this importance is given to it, by other people. And speaking of these songs right here, or just any of your songs, like a lot of songs you just kind of jam them into existence and they become something. At what point does it become meaningful for you? Like, how deliberate, I guess, is what I'm saying, is like, do your lyrics have to be? How deliberate does this song have to stand for something immediately?
I feel like it varies. You know what I mean? I feel like for me personally, certain lyrics and certain songs would just be, innately tied together, and it's just sort of like after a while, I can't, separate lyric from the conception of lyrics and the tune or whatever. I feel like most songs, at least most songs that I write, the melodies come around first, and there's often sort of like a first draft of lyrics, or maybe like the first thing I want this song to be about. And I feel like most of the time, I feel like the heart of that usually most often carries into what the final outcome of the song or the final product. But I feel like at the beginning, it's usually just sort of like, I'll often just sing how I feel, about, in a given day, how I'm that day. I feel like those are, those are like my foundation lyrics, maybe. There have been songs like that. And then as I'm working on the song more and more, I don't know. I feel like I usually always want to try and write about something beyond myself in a way. I don't know. It feels just like very indulgent, sometimes self-indulgent, to just write about my problems, or I don't know, that kind of thing. So I feel like, especially more in the last kind of like 5 years, I felt that way. You know what I mean? So I'm always just trying to search, and I feel like that's what's good about Animal Collective, and working on solo projects and kind of having the time away from working on Animal Collective records, is just because I feel like we all need this time of inspiration, you know what I mean, to sort of, and I feel like I just like to observe, and I feel like traveling around and being and having this type of lifestyle, and this being my work, like, allows me to observe, and I feel like that's kind of like the real inspiration, just kind of things I see, and hopefully as I'm jotting notes down or making journal entries or whatever, or taking photographs, which I do a lot, I'll just remember and get inspired. And it always is something that's meaningful to me. I feel like it's very rare that I'll write a song or write lyrics and I'm sort of like, all right, well, these are just sort of like whatever lyrics. I mean, there might be little filler words here and there that I use just to sort of like tie things together, add a little color or something like that. But I feel like at the end of the process, I try and hope, hope at least most of it has like deep meaning for me.
Yeah. But in looking at some of those too, like, I know Cherokee seems like an example of this, like, because I know for some artists with with lockdown pandemic, no touring, you don't get as many experiences. So you have to look at these smaller moments, and the environment, and I don't mean the environment like we were talking about earlier. I mean, just what's going on around you in those, small moments. I don't know if you had to experience any of that. Like, I should also say with that song too, there is some very, very specific moments in like that song. And I think I'm assuming, I think you're doing some songwriting on that one, but like at the Exxon, they were confused if I was American lines and stuff like that. Like,
oh yeah, well, I mean, something like that. And it's funny. I did some interview yesterday where they were asking me about very specific lines in that song too. It was actually an Italian interview, and I mentioned focaccia in that song, and so the journalist was like, "What's up with the the line about focaccia?" And so yeah, there's certain things that song in particular for me, I think I've seen it written about lately as sort of like a road trip kind of song, which it sort of is. I feel like I do a lot of road trips, and that's how I see a lot of the U.S. at least. I feel like for me and for the other guys, we talked a little bit about coming from America, being American, what it means these days to be a band from the United States of America, and being a band that travels around the world spreading a message, and what are you trying to do, and that versus what it used to mean to be an American band, and especially for a band like this that's been doing this for so long. Yeah, it was just something we were enjoying questioning and thinking about a lot while making this. And I think Cherokee for me is part of that, and I think some really heavy issues, definitely came to the surface during this quarantine period. And I think it's me working through that. There's a line in the middle of it that's sort of like, the stoop that you love is fiending for meaning. And it's, for me, that's sort of like, where did I come from? You know what I mean? Like, have I taken where I've come from for granted? You know what I mean? Or just trying to make sense of certain aspects of my past, in lieu of all the stuff that's happening right now. And so the song at its heart is about that. But yeah, the different images, that Exxon American, that actually happened to me. Like, I was just approached by somebody working at an Exxon that was like, "Do you speak English?" And I don't know. It's like, yeah, I don't. So it's kind of stuff like that, and it happened to me on a road trip. So yeah, it's just stuff like that that's like, it finds its way into a song, I'm just fascinated by the diversity of the world and people and strange people and, I don't know, straight people, and you know what I mean, all the whole mix. And so I just want to write about it all. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily in a negative light. It's not in a positive light. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that also has I have a few, I think, favorite lines on this record, but especially there will be lots of lonely mailboxes when language disappears. I think I've chewed on that one. Like that's a good line.
um, yeah, I think about language a lot. We talk about language. I feel like the other guys get really frustrated with me sometimes, just ranting about language. And I find language for me, most importantly, is, especially in terms of being a songwriter, is just something that's fun to mess around with, and I feel like that's probably clear from the songs that I write. There's a playfulness and sort of a looseness I take to language and words. And I think language is just something funny. So yeah, I envision maybe post-apocalyptic days of no language anymore, or societies that speak just in symbols, that kind of thing, pictures. And it's happened in the past and could happen in the future. And I feel like that's a lot of what this record is about as well. For me, is how different are the past and the future really going to be, and where are we headed, and are we headed to where we've already been in the past, or are we really progressing, and what's linear, what hasn't happened already. And that's what, like, songs like We Go Back are about. And putting my personal experience into them, and definitive emotion, so there is like an emotional touch to it. I'm not just sort of, I don't want to read like a textbook or something like that. Emotion is important to me, and the emotion of the songs is and the melodies, like the emotion is in the melody usually to me, and that's what comes first. So I guess just going back to that earlier question, like, it's sort of like what lyrics fit this emotion the best to me. Like, how can I make sense of this emotion? What am I feeling? And then it just comes out, these crazy lyrics.
It's almost a little surprising. I went back and I was watching your "What's in My Bag" thing with Amoeba Records, the video that's online, and and here you are, you're pulling out records by Sun Ra, Kasugi, lots of artists that I can't even pretend like I can say their name, and
Right.
and a lot of it is interesting but abstract types of music, and then when you listen to your talent at melody, as we're talking about here, and I only use this in a very broad term when I say pop, but there seems to be a little bit of a divide of like the listening that you're showcasing, let's say, in that one specific, and I know people are multi-layered, but I don't know, does that ever seem like do you have that argument with yourself? Like, is this too catchy? Because you write some really catchy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I mean, I guess I don't really think about it that much. I mean, it's just, especially now, it's like what I do and how I came into it, and how what I started doing was just writing songs and writing melodies at the same time as exploring an interest in sound music concrete, minimalist, drone music, whatever you want to call all of that stuff, intellectual music. I feel like for me, just using my imagination as a listener has always been really crucial, and a good practice, and I feel like a good practice for everybody. It's healthy to explore the imagination, and I think that's kind of what more noise sound music does for me. It allows me, it's more open. It's like, and maybe it's because I write melodies, and that's a practice I like, that I can sort of infuse my listening experience with that. It's sort of, I can take music like that where I want to, and if I feel like putting my own melody, if that happens when I'm listening to something like that, like Kasugi, and I put in my own melodies or something while I'm listening to it. That's just a cool part of the listening experience. For my own stuff, yeah, I guess it's not. Sometimes I'm interested in a sound or making a song that, or a record. I feel like that's more based on sounds and sound quality and textures. And I feel like that it's just whatever sort of strikes me as inspiring. Like, oh, it's sort of just like, it's like, oh, that's the song. Or, and there's other times where it's like, I've got this melody that I want to do something with. And, that's what the song, it needs to be about. I feel like the trick is just not, especially these days, is not overcrowding a song with too much,
Right.
like too much action. You know what I mean? It's finding the right balance, and balance is just the key to living for me. You know what I mean? Just sort of like the trick, finding balance. It's tough. So I feel like that goes in tandem, living and the music process with me, just sort of like finding my way, finding the way to do that kind of stuff is the best way. And I feel like the balance of those worlds, the sort of more sonic textural world and the melodic world are the best, is the best place to be. Yeah. But it's not always, that achievable. I don't know.
I gotta say, you do it well, and as a fan, with this record, with all the stuff that you've done in the past, with the solo stuff, I was looking, and I'll wrap up here too. I know we're loose on time, but Pandemic Dream #4, I know came out on Bandcamp, and just in the solo record, what you do, that balance is what I'm trying to get at here, is so well done. I love it, man. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's some personally done better than other times, but we try.
Did I see somewhere that you all talked about maybe a companion record to go along with this one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to call it I guess it is a companion record in that it's I think we wrote about like 26 songs, or put 26 songs together in 2019, which were all really important to us. And the original idea was to, go into a studio with an engineer and record all of this stuff. I feel like because of having to quarantine, we couldn't do that. But there were certain songs that we felt the energy and the magic to them sort of like really had to do with us playing them together. I mean, we probably could have recorded them at home, and done it the same way. But I feel like for us, it just would have changed things a little too much. And I think it also just would have made it too similar to Time Skiffs, And so, yeah, we've just decided to record these other remaining songs that we have, which are 9 songs, in a studio, which we have at this point. So it's hard to say right now if it's a full record. That there's definitely a record in there because there's some long songs and it's a good amount of material. But I can't really say if they'll all be on a record or it's just sort of like, yeah, now we have this other group of songs that we have something to do with, which we will hopefully soon.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to hearing those. In the meantime, man, congratulations again on Time Skiffs. It's such a wonderful record, and thanks for taking the time to talk about it.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for talking.
No problem.